Merry Christmas. You're listening to Serenity Radio. And this is Positivity Power with Anne and Amanda.
So, hello, season's greetings, and welcome to this special Christmas show, Positivity Power. Thank you for joining myself, Anne Milne Riley, and the lovely Amanda Forster Searle today as we talk about the power of positivity and share our techniques and strategies to help you to develop a more positive mindset for 2021. Now, I'm a self-development coach and trainer and Serenity presenter on the Self-Development Hub show, which will be coming to you in the new year. And I'm joined by Amanda, who is an emotional freedom technique and wellness practitioner, whose show is also starting in the new year. Hi, Amanda. What's your show? Tell us a little bit about it before we start.
Yeah, hello. So my show, my first series for Serenity is entitled Manifest Your Best Year Ever. And it's basically going to go through letting go of the past, acceptance of the present, and then moving forward to bringing in using positivity and tools to try and, engage for the best year ahead. And given this past year we've had, I think it will hopefully give people a lot of hope as well.
Fantastic. It sounds amazing. So it's exciting for us, isn't it? Because we're starting out on this together in the new year. And after such a challenging year, it can be difficult to see the positivity in our daily lives. But there is some to be had, I think. And a positive mindset ensures you make the best of each day. And I think it creates improved resilience. What a year we have had. We've all experienced a really difficult time, and one that we will all be happy to leave behind, no doubt. Some people are even telling me they've stopped watching the news, and you can understand it, can't you?
Absolutely. And it's, we all need to be aware of the facts, don't we? But I think if you were to switch on the TV, every time you will see someone else's opinion, an interview with someone else, and it can become extremely negative, and I think people pick up on that, as we know.
Yeah, absolutely. And myself and Amanda, we got talking about something most people haven't considered, and we were talking the other day when we decided to do this show, and that is that something that people haven't considered, and that is some of the positives that have actually come out of this often frightening and bizarre experience. Now, I'm in Preston, Lancashire, and Amanda, you're down in rural Somerset, is that right?
Yes, I am, yes.
Yeah. So one of these positive things that I've taken from this experience has been that 8 p.m. clapping experience that we did for a certain number of minutes, and that growing awareness, I think, amongst all of us of what the NHS and frontline and key workers have been doing for us at a time when many of us have been hiding indoors. I remember feeling quite emotional when that started, because I live on a quiet country lane and I rarely see my neighbours, but for the first time we were all out there doing something together. I mean, how was it for you, Amanda?
Very similar, actually. We live just outside a village. The first evening that everyone started doing that, we actually drove it's about 3 miles to the edge of our nearest town where there's a hospital, and we just parked up in a lay-by, so we didn't get out the car, but we wound down the windows because I wanted my daughter, who's 12, to really feel what was going on, because we live so rural, it wouldn't be the same. And we literally opened the windows and we started clapping, and then suddenly all behind us, because there was like a row of houses, you could hear them clapping in their gardens. And like you, I got really emotional. It just really, really got to me. And in fact, the following week, we're literally half a mile outside of our village. But because it's so quiet, because obviously there were no cars on the road, we clapped outside our house, and we could hear our neighbour And then just in the distance, we could hear the clapping from the village. It was amazing.
It was, wasn't it? And I think that, I found that quite moving, that you could hear it in the distance, couldn't you? You know, and I think, occasionally we'd go out into the street and there wouldn't be many people, but the clapping would be really loud because people were there. They might have even been in their gardens, but everyone was doing it.
Because it's been such a weird year, I thought, in their memories, especially. We would have remembered it for any reason, wouldn't we? But for her to actually realise why we were doing it and being outside a hospital, I just felt was really important.
Fantastic, yeah. And the scientists have become heroes too, haven't they? More noticeably recently, which I think is lovely. We're really appreciating the job they do for us. So I know that I've spent those early months telling everyone to keep safe. And there have been lots of stories of people meeting neighbours they've never known before and communities helping each other. Is this something you've experienced, Amanda?
Yes, I mean, again, because we live, fairly rural, but the village itself that we're a part of is, very much community driven. So they did some wonderful things to just lift people's spirits. So there's a little cricket club in the centre of the village because it's only tiny. It's literally a tiny little shop and a cricket club and a church and a primary school. So that's it. But they literally, a couple of evenings on the NHS evenings, they broadcast on a tannoy music just to lift everyone's spirits. And people were just going out into their gardens. And again, from where we live, half a mile away, we could still hear it. So it was just really exciting and felt as though you were part of something as a community.
Yes, yeah, it really made people feel like part of something, didn't it? It was lovely.
Yeah.
So one of the things that a lot of people say have been a positive when I've asked people is time at home. And perhaps for some it's been a blessing or a curse, but it's something a lot of people have talked about. However, time off work without that guilt that you should be doing something, for many, I think has been a welcome distraction, and the weather helped, didn't it, early on? But, so many people I think have experienced that time at home where, you couldn't do anything else really, which has probably been a unique experience for some people. And certainly simple things for me, like, baking, catching up on decorating, that sort of thing, I've quite enjoyed. And I often don't get to do. And so just spending a little bit more time with my family. And I've spoken to lots of people, actually. It's amusing how many people have completely redecorated the whole of their homes during this period. So what have you been up to?
But I certainly made more time for me. And it was amazing that kind of, even taking away the school run and the whole kind of organisation around all of that, and then all the normal things you'd perhaps be rushing around at the weekend to do, I just made sure that I went and sat in the garden with a cup of tea and just read a book for sort of 20 minutes or something. And like you don't often, even though we should, allow yourself or give yourself that time, because there's always something to do, isn't there?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so many people I work with, I've used this time to learn something new, and I need no excuse to do that myself. There's so many online courses and I love learning. And so I've been learning to create and edit videos for my business. That's one of the things I've used the time for. But have you been learning anything new, Amanda?
Yes. Funny enough, for my business as well, I took the time to embrace doing live talks on social media with my business, which was one thing that I'd done very little of. And, anything like that can be a little bit sort of overwhelming if you let it. But having that extra time just meant that I could really play around with it and become more confident in sort of how to technically do it, which I think we all have a bit of a learning curve with. So, yeah, absolutely. It's given people a lot of time, I think, to do that, but also to think about things that they're perhaps interested in, which they've not, had the chance to do so before.
There's been a lot of talk about weight gain during this fight, definitely throughout the first lockdown. And I think that spurred many into getting regular exercise. So, especially as we're all really doing very little, maybe working from home, you're popping into the kitchen and that's about as far as you go.
Yeah.
So I think lots of people have begun to walk, and especially at the beginning, that was the only thing we were allowed to do, really, was take a short walk. I know I've been keeping an eye on the scales and walking regularly, and my son launched his PT business during lockdown. So it's clearly something people are concerned about, you know, as they've been forced.
And there was more focus, wasn't there, on online workouts. Actually, I've had an online subscription for a number of years now with a company. So for me, it was kind of normal. I do my workouts sort of in the morning. But it was great to see people embrace that actually, you know, you can do whatever you want to do if you put your mind to it and if you know, allow that focus, really.
Yeah, and I know physical and psychological health is really at the centre of what you do, Amanda. So is there anything you've actually noticed about that aspect and people being stuck indoors?
You know, we all know that how we live our lives on a daily basis does affect our mind, and physical exercise is a huge boost for our mindset. And doing it first thing in the morning, especially, can really set the tone for your day. I think it was good that there was a big focus on people doing free workouts. I mean, I know the body coach Joe Wicks did free YouTube workouts every day, and therefore that people that, you know, if they had to drive somewhere normally to do their exercise actually could rethink. And I had people on my Facebook group saying, you know, they were ordering, and I think they were sold out in some places, ordering like weights and things.
Yeah.
They all do it at home because they you know, normally would be going to the gym. And I thought that was really encouraging because I think people just embraced what they could do rather than focusing on what they couldn't do.
And one of the most wonderful things I noticed was a difference in the environment. You know, certainly early on, cleaner air, more birds about. And, you know, I'd noticed reports of sheep and things like that coming down from the hills into the towns because it was so much quieter. And I wonder if it sent out a clear message to the powers that be that we don't need to be in cars commuting everywhere.
And that was felt all over the world, wasn't it? The pictures that we're seeing of places like Venice with cleaner canals and the air over China and stuff like that just showed in a short time how nature was healing itself.
Yes, absolutely. And how quickly. It has been a difficult time, though different for each and every one. You came out with a great analogy the other day, Amanda, about boats in a storm.
You know, there's that saying, isn't it? Oh, we're all in the same boat. Well, actually, we haven't been. We've all been in the same storm, but in different boats, because everyone's experience of this year will have been slightly different. For some, sadly, there'll be more negatives, but for a lot, there'll be positives. And I think that's worth considering, that we've all been going through it, but very differently.
Yeah, so, you know, of course, we've all been talking about what we cannot do and people we can't see for so long now. But it's really interesting to acknowledge those things that have been good about the last year. You know, if you're still struggling to focus on anything positive, myself and Amanda are here to help, aren't we, Amanda? We're bringing two very different perspectives on how we can foster and build positivity today and to make the most of our shared experience. So Amanda and I will be back shortly after this break to share how we can help others to achieve just that. Back soon.
आई जगत भी आई दिन चले परवान एक संसारी एक पंडरी एक लाए दीवान जीवित सपावे तवे चलावे जिव होवे फुरमान होवे के ओना नदर नावे बहुत आए हो विडान The say Adanila Nadanahat Jug Jug Ko Ves 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 Ekamahi Jugat Viyahi Tin chale parvan Ek sansari Ek pandari Ek laye divan Jiv tis pave Tive chalave Jiv hove furman Hove ke ona nadar nave Bahut aaye hove Adanila Nadanahat Jug Jug Ko Ves Adanila Nadanahat Jug Jug Ko Ves Adanila Nadanahat Jug Jug Ko Ves Adanila Nadanahat Jug Jug Ko Ekamahi Jugat Viyahi Tin chale parvan Ek sansari Ek pandari Ek laye divan Jiv tis pave Tive chalave Jiv hove furman Hove ke una nadar nave Bahut aaye ho Adanila Nadanahat Jug Jug Ko Ves Adanila Nadanahat Jug Jug Ko Ves Adanila Nadanahat Jug Jug Ko Ves Adanila Nadanahat Jug Jug Ko Ekamahi Jugat Viyahi Tin chale parvan Ek sansari Ek pandari Jiv hove furman hove ke ona nadir nave bahutae ho binda संसारी एक पंडारी एक लाए दीवान जिव तिस पावे तिवे चलावे जिव होवे फुरमान होवे के ओना नदर नावे बहुत हो विदान
You're listening to Positivity Power on Serenity Radio.
Okay, so welcome back, everyone. So we've had a shared global experience, but we've all experienced this in different ways, haven't we? And both myself and Amanda work with clients to improve their well-being. I'm a psychotherapist and I focus on self-development, and I'll be talking to you a little later about a cognitive behavioural approach to negative thoughts. But Amanda is a wellness and emotional freedom technique practitioner. Amanda, can you share with the audience a little bit more about what that means, and also share with us how you are working with others to ensure their physical and mental health?
Absolutely. So emotional freedom technique is basically using the meridians, but if people think of things like acupuncture, its nickname for EFT is actually psychological acupuncture for the mind, and without needles, obviously, which is an easy thing. But basically, in a nutshell, what it is there are tapping points on the body that we can use to basically tap on with our fingers, and this actually then interacts with our subconscious and helps to disturb and sort of move around those negative thoughts or stored emotions that we've had from previous experiences in our life. And by doing that alongside me talking through and sort of guiding, we can almost drill down to what the underlying cause is for somebody's anxiety, for instance. When someone is suffering from anxiety, they don't necessarily, or they think, let's twist it, they think they know what's caused it, but more often there will be an underlying cause that they perhaps hadn't even realised was connected. So by doing some EFT therapy with them, alongside other modalities that I'm trained in, which I've studied Meta Health, which is looking at the effects of stress on the mind and body, we can then peel away the layers to really get to the root of what the cause is.
So it's a really holistic approach, really, isn't it? You know, if I came to you for EFT, what would that feel like for me? You know, what would that experience be like for me?
Well, what I do, I place it with my other modalities, because what I believe in is we have to treat the mind and body as a whole. So if I was to help someone with EFT techniques and processes that we would go through, but they're eating a really unhealthy diet and their digestive system is struggling and they may be suffering from IBS or maybe have a lot of caffeine or sugar in their diet, the results are not going to be as brilliant as if we look at the whole thing together. So I basically would start by understanding where they're struggling, but also that in their consultation form, they would then go through all the things, and there's like a body scan, diet and nutrition area and everything. So I can really get a snapshot of where they are currently, of the whole person. And that then enables me to then know where to start. Because again, quite often, some of the potentially poor nutritional habits may be linked to mindset or, in habits that they've picked up along the way due to sort of experiences in their life. So everything needs to be looked at, as a whole.
You know, I mean, we talk about emotional eating, don't we? And so, you know, that these things definitely are linked. And it's interesting that it sounds like you've got a kind of toolkit of skills to help people. So would you say that when you're working with people, you're using various different skills depending on the type of person you're working with or the issue?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I've trained in different modalities, and therefore, as with everything, one size doesn't fit all. I mean, somebody may think, they'll go to see a counsellor or they'll go to see a hypnotherapist. And I've had people that have done that and it just hasn't worked for them. But then when they come to me, I then assess what I feel, which bits of what I can offer in my toolkit will help them the most. And we then create that blend to work on them, specifically. I think it's worth bearing that in mind for people, that even if a friend recommends somebody to you because they've been to see them, it doesn't necessarily mean it might be the right fit for you. And I think it's important for people to almost do their own research, but also something that I always advocate, and I think people should definitely be mindful of. A practitioner or therapist like myself should feel confident enough to offer like a free initial short session, so that you can meet the person, even if it's on Zoom or whatever, for them to see and listen to what we can offer. But also you have to have that resonance with someone to be able to work together. And I think it's important for that person to feel comfortable. And I definitely offer that with all of my potential clients.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things is that therapeutic alliance, isn't it, with the client, that they can really feel they can work with you and they trust you. So let's imagine that you were working with a client today, Amanda, who is really struggling to feel positive. The events of the last year, have really weighed heavy on them, and they are really struggling to look forward towards 2021. How would you work with them now?
Firstly, I would look at where they're feeling that the most, because obviously that sort of negativity could be emotional, caused by it's triggered something that happened in the past and brought it all to the surface. It could be because their experience of this year has caused relationship friction. It could be they're struggling with work. It could be that it's, made them miss people in their family that are no longer able to see them. Whatever it might be, there will be a combination of elements that will be making up the way that person is feeling. So we would try to kind of just, first of all, I always work on what thing in their mind springs to the surface first. And then we would work through that with tapping and the therapy that goes with that. So we would look at addressing, EFT works by addressing the negative, but then bringing in the positive around that issue. And then also there may be aspects of that issue that need further breaking down. So a good analogy is you've got a woodland full of trees. You can see a lot of the trees in your near vision, but there's some really, really big tall trees. And behind those, there's some smaller trees that you can't even see yet. And until we can walk through that woodland and see what's behind things, we don't know what there is to deal with. So it's kind of a methodology of breaking down those different aspects.
I love that idea of walking through the trees, because you're absolutely right. You know, I know that when I see clients, they very often come to me, as you sort of intimated at the beginning, with an issue or with, you know, with something they're worried about. And there's a lot more, or actually it's not the main issue.
No, exactly.
Yeah, and it's only when you start working with them you really get to what needs to be done. So when you're tapping, are there particular areas of the body that you would do that?
Yeah, so the key points are the side of the hand, then it's the top of the eyebrow, side of the eye, underneath the eye, in between your nose and top of your lip, underneath your lip, just under the collarbone, the side underneath your armpit, and then the top of the head. And we create a sequence. So we would start with a setup statement. So say somebody's, and I've had this, not from clients, but a couple of friends actually, who, you know, we all talk about Zoom and communication, but it has become overwhelming for some. So people can become really nervous about going onto a Zoom meeting. So we would first address by saying, even though I'm feeling nervous about this meeting, I know that I am safe. Or even though I'm feeling nervous about this meeting, I know that I will be okay. So we basically start tapping around the points, and we do what they call a SUDS rating, which is a subjective units of distress rating from 1 to 10 to see what level they're at to start with. And then by doing a few rounds of tapping and changing the wording as we go to bring in sort of more positive affirmational statements, we would then assess the rating at the end and see whether we've still got some more work to do, or see if anything else has arisen from that round of tapping.
Right. No, that's fascinating. What would you say to our listeners who are feeling quite negative today, and they're hoping to gain something out of this, you know, this conversation we're having that they can apply themselves?
I would say that you can, I'm actually thinking we could post an image on our social media channels for listeners, because there is something really powerful of being able to just self-soothe the small minor issues yourself. If you tap on the side of the hand gently, this is a really prominent and always the starting position for any tapping. Try and sit somewhere calm, take a few slow, deep breaths in, and then in your mind, run through just a little script, acknowledging, without judging yourself, how you're feeling. And just say, even though I'm feeling anxious, or even though I'm feeling worried, and bring in those words of, I feel calm, I will be okay, I've survived this before, those kind of things. And just self-soothe by taking 5-10 minutes just to really try and ground yourself. And that in itself, for a lot of people, can just be, it's even more powerful than meditation, because it's actually rewiring your brain's pathway of thoughts to the point that you are telling yourself it's okay. And that is the power in it. I mean, obviously, it's a lot deeper than that if I'm working with a client, but as a simple exercise, that can be really helpful.
That sounds really, really interesting. You're working with people in this way all the time. Is it something that you feel suits everybody? Is it something that, you know, you feel you can work with everyone in this way?
Yes, I do. I think like any modality, the person who is wanting the help has to be open to working on themselves. I mean, I think that's the first hurdle. And in fact, what I've done with some clients is I've had clients, for instance, who have wanted to give up smoking. And they've been at a point where they're not smoking regularly, but it's still part of them. We would not go directly in and work on the giving up smoking. We actually start by the fear of the thought of giving up smoking. And because there are different techniques with EFT we can use, for people that are struggling to voice their issues, or they find it too painful or emotional to voice their issues, we can do it without a talking therapy part of it. We can actually work through it and break down those layers with them just thinking about it, and they don't have to voice it. So a lot of people find that where they may have really been put off with seeing a counsellor or otherwise, something that I do can be really helpful because it takes that fear factor away.
And that is a really strong message, I think, because you can work with clients without the context, can't you? You don't necessarily need to know everything that's happened to them. And that's the biggest fear for so many of them, that they're going to have to unpack something verbally to a stranger that they don't really want to share. But clearly you've got those tools to work with their feelings and emotions rather than, having to talk through everything that they've experienced, which is, I think, really, really powerful.
It is. And exactly how you say, that is the thing that most people struggle, and then they don't go and seek help because the thought of actually sharing is more overwhelming, that it puts people off. So absolutely, it's a really strong message, I think, for both of us to get out there. And
it sounds like the techniques you use help people to process that material, work through it, which is really great. So it's been really interesting. I'm certainly going to try that tapping technique. So tell me, so it's on the side of my hand?
Yeah, it's the side of your hand where at the base of your little finger, just before your wrist, that middle section. And with the other hand, and it doesn't matter whether it's left or right hand, and then the other hand that's doing the tapping, it's the three main fingers, and it's just lightly tapping on that section on the side.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to our final break now, and when we return, I'll be talking a little bit about how something we all have determines how positive or negative we feel. We'll be discussing thinking errors and how to change those nasty little habits. So we'll be discussing how cognitive behavioural techniques can help you to flip negative thoughts into positive ones. See you shortly.
Excuse me for a while I'm wide-eyed and I'm so down, caught in the middle. I've excused you for a while I'm wide-eyed and I'm so down, caught in the middle. Turn a blind eye with a stare caught right in the middle. while I'm wide-eyed and I'm so down caught in the middle. Have you wondered for a while? I have a feeling deep down you're caught in the middle. Yeah, man seems so strong. Yeah, man speaks so long. Man, have you been so wrong? Yeah, man seems so strong. Yeah, man speaks so long. Man, have you been so wrong?
You're listening to Positivity Power on Serenity Radio.
Welcome back, everyone. So you may remember from the beginning of the show, I'm a self-development coach and trainer, and I talk a lot about cognitive behavioural techniques in my coaching work. So for me, they're a kind of no-nonsense approach to negative thoughts and feelings. Human beings, we all think negatively. We're programmed to do this. From the beginnings of prehistory, we've scanned for trouble, to think the worst, prepare for it. And, these were the things we needed to do to survive. If you didn't prioritise eating and your safety, you might not last. We found caves that wild beasts couldn't find or wouldn't enter, and we ensured that we hunted and gathered and continually fed our tribe. However, the scanning we did then is still part of our consciousness today. And though so many of us no longer need to worry about immediate risks, it's still part of our makeup, and we find ourselves scanning still. So, we might concern ourselves with other risks like unemployment or poor health or personal safety. The important thing to note here is that negative thoughts create anxiety. Anxiety doesn't just happen. It follows the thought. So when you realise this, the importance of thinking positively, or at least realistically, becomes paramount. Human beings are irrational and negative, and it comes from that survival instinct. However, in the modern world, it results in stress and anxiety and sometimes fear. We can do something about these destructive thinking habits. They're called thinking errors, and we'll explore some of these today, and I'll be showing you how you can turn these bad habits into positive ones. It amazes me when I embark on this exercise with clients, because they often tell me that they don't think negatively, that they're not negative thinkers. So I want you to make a mental note here of how many of these habits or thinking errors you experience yourself. And make sure you chip in here, Amanda, if you recognise any of these in yourself. Yeah. So thinking error, number one, catastrophising. You have a few words with your boss or with somebody and you think, that's it, I'm going to lose my job. And if I lose my job, I'll lose my house. Do you recognise this at all in yourself?
I do. I mean, the whole concept of the negativity bias is something that I often talk about. And your example so resonates, because I often say to people, and I know you'll appreciate this, if people have had an appraisal and they've had 10 wonderful things said about them, and then they say one slightly negative, and it might just be a minor thing that perhaps they were late for meetings a few times. It's our wired brain that will go out to that meeting thinking of that negative thing and not all the other positives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we call that ignoring the positives, because all the time we get that, don't we, where there are a number of positives, and I encourage my clients to really make the most out of those positives, because we don't get them all the time. And for me, they're kind of an energy, they're kind of something that we need to draw on. So I don't know about you, on my computer, I have a file that says good news. And any nice emails I get off people, any thanks, anything like that, I drag that email into my good news file. And I rarely read it, but if ever I needed to, it's all there as a reminder, you know, of the good things that have happened and I've achieved. So another thinking error is turning molehills into mountains, you know, amplifying things. You know, something small happens and we begin to think more and more negatively about what that means. All or nothing thinking. I come across this a lot. I don't know about you in your work, Amanda. I failed a part of, you know, I failed an exam, therefore I'm going to fail my degree. It's really common, that one, you know, and it's hard to imagine why we are so negative, really. I think one of the things that's most noticeable here are the what if thoughts. You know, they definitely begin, a cycle of anxiety. You know, what if this happens? What if that happens? Do you ever find yourself doing that?
Definitely. And I think I now, over the last sort of 9 years, can call myself around. What I find, I'm sure you're the same with clients, is a really simple analogy I give is the negativity bias as far as, I don't know, you miss your alarm getting up in the morning. So you're kind of off kilter to start with. And then because if you let yourself dwell on that, like you've just said, you then spill your coffee on your shirt. You get hit by all the red traffic lights. And people then can actually downward spiral. And your mind is then inviting in you to see the negative in every situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's another thinking error. Let's see. And this is definitely something I do. And it's called mind reading. You know, and this is where maybe you say hello to your boss in the morning and they snap at you and you think, they don't like me. Or, you know, you walk into the cafe, you know, at work and people are whispering about something and you think they really don't like me or they're annoyed at me. I think I've been guilty of that one over the years.
Yeah, and I think I have on the side of even things like messages, because we're so used to now wanting an instant response with things, you know, text message, WhatsApp, whatever, that sometimes if somebody doesn't reply within a certain period of time, whatever that might be in your mind, you can then start doing that, can't you? Thinking, why haven't they replied? Maybe they don't like and then you start rereading your message. Maybe they didn't like what I wrote, or you know, and you can start questioning yourself, can't you? Yeah.
But, you know, what I recognise here is that when people experience anxiety, the anxiety doesn't just happen. A thought comes first. There's always a thought beforehand. And so, you know, that whole mind reading example, you know, something happens, there's a trigger, you see somebody, you know, or you send a message and it's a long time before they reply. That becomes the trigger. And then the next thing, you ask yourself a question. What have I done wrong? Or how are they feeling? You know, do they not like me or whatever that is? And then the anxiety begins, you know? And this is the key to the cognitive approach, is that, you know, if we can be more rational about our thinking, then we don't trigger anxiety continuously or low mood. So a few more thinking errors here. Rule making. You know, when you say, you know, I must achieve this or I'm not worth something, or I must finish this on time or people won't respect me, I think that's a common one.
Definitely. I think people put too much pressure on themselves unnecessarily, don't they? Which means that, like you say, if something is even a day late for whatever reason, that's still a loss to them, isn't it? Which is so damaging.
Yeah, it is. And very often, I think, because we set these stringent rules for ourselves, everyone around us think, you know, we're doing well, except us. You know, which is such a shame. And that kind of brings me into, you know, the whole comparison-itis, you know, the comparison-itis, I call it, you know, and social media really hasn't helped this for young people. Actually comparing yourself to others all the time. I feel so sorry for young people nowadays and how conscious they are of themselves because of it. Have you experienced anything like this?
Absolutely. And I think it might have been Jay Shetty that did a talk on it. He was basically saying, you know, that snapshot of somebody as the happy family or the happy couple is what they want everyone to see. But no one sees that 5 minutes before or 5 minutes afterwards, there's a massive argument going on, or the kids are misbehaving, or whatever, that it doesn't portray reality. It is just a snapshot of a moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think I hope we're getting more wise to social media. I mean, if we're having a bad day, we don't post it all over social media, do we? We don't say, look at my terrible life or look at what went wrong today, you know? So I'm hoping we're getting, you know, a little bit wiser to that. So, you know, the important thing here is to recognize your thinking errors, because we all have some. And they tend to repeat, you know, they tend to be things we do regularly. And the more we are aware of them, the more we can try to think a bit more logically. And in some ways, this isn't about thinking positively. It's about being more realistic, you know, more logical about everything. So here are a few things we need to do. And the first one is to understand that thoughts or feelings aren't facts. You know, they're simply not. Just because we think something doesn't mean that's actually what's happening. And classic example here, you know, on a bad day, I look in the mirror and I think, oh, Anne, you need to go on a diet. Come on, pull yourself together. You need to lose some weight. And then, you know, the next day I might look in the mirror and think, I look okay today. You know, I'm fine. And nothing happened in those 24 hours. You know, it's simply how you're feeling and your mindset, you know. Yeah. So understanding that just because you're thinking something doesn't mean it's true, and that we should question that, you know. So that awareness of the triggers that make us feel that way and what we feel inside are important, because then the consequences follow. If we're not keeping those thoughts in check, you know, the consequences then follow from there. So another thing we need to try and do is to open up our minds to the different possibilities. So if we speak to our boss in the morning and they're snappy with us, most people say they think, what have I done wrong? That's the first thing they think. The boss has just snapped at me and stomped off. It must be me. But actually, somebody who uses CBT techniques ask themselves, what have I done wrong? What has he done wrong? What has somebody else done wrong? You know, what happened for him last night? Is he unhappy? Is he unwell? And actually,
so many reasons, aren't there?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we just go for the negative default. But if we can ask ourselves, or, you know, think through the options, then, you know, what we find is we stop worrying and we stop feeling that negativity and anxiety.
Yes.
You know, and asking ourselves, what's the worst that can happen? Sometimes we need to do that. You know, I speak to such a lot of people at the moment that are worried about their jobs, and it sounds like a flippant thing to say, you know, when I ask them, what's the worst that can happen? And they say, well, I'll lose my job. And but how many other people go on to get another job? And, you know, it seems to me that they stop at that point as if there isn't life beyond that point. And so really understanding what's the worst that can happen can help you to begin to put together a plan. I think that's more positive.
I mean, a phrase I use a lot, and I think we mentioned this when we spoke, is pause, reflect, respond. Because quite often, especially with things like emails and misinterpretation, and like you say, that thought process, we can so often read things the wrong way, can't we?
Yeah.
And respond in a protective manner or a angry manner, you know, if something has been misinterpreted, that actually just stepping back and really, you know, reflecting on what is it, and like you say, go through that process of, could it be this, could it be that, could it be something else, before you respond, can just give you that thinking time.
Absolutely. So, you know, finally, I would say the important thing is to look for the evidence that things aren't, you know, as you worry that they are. You know, don't just look for the evidence that they are, look for the evidence that they aren't, and focus on the positives. And that's vital to create balance. And because of our automatic negative default, I think we have got to work on that to create the balance, I think. So hopefully we've all learned something new today about how we can become and remain more positive. No one approach fits all here, so it's great to share a range of approaches and techniques that we can all use. Myself and Amanda both agreed a great way to finish the show today would be to share a quote we both love, which might inspire others to work on their positive mental attitude. And mine is from Henry T. Ford, the amazing entrepreneur and car manufacturing pioneer, who emphasised how much attitude can determine success. And he said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Something I keep telling everybody. It's one of my favourites. And over to Amanda. What quote do you want to share with the listeners today?
So the quote I have chosen is from a lady called Dr. Edith Eger, and she's, I think, one of the only few remaining survivors of Auschwitz. She had a horrendous time there from her teenage years, but she turned her life around, and her book is so inspiring if anyone should want to read it. But the quote that really I thought was just so empowering, and this is it. We cannot choose to have a life free of hurt, but we can choose to be free, to escape the past, no matter what befalls us, and to embrace the possible. I invite you to make the choice to be free.
Amazing. What a lovely way to end the show. So from myself and Amanda, we hope you enjoy the rest of the festivities, whether you're with family or having a quiet time on your own this Christmas. And we hope we've inspired you to think positively about 2021. So from us both, bye for now. Bye.
You've been listening to Positivity Power. From everyone here at the Serenity Radio team, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.